So I'm showing you a part of Sam Harris's latest podcast where he's talking about campus protests. Now understand, usually I agree with Sam Harris, but it seems like he's finding every type of argument that he possibly can to try to discredit protesters and to try to put Israel in the right. And so on this type of thing, I'm going to have to disagree with him, and I'll explain some of my reasons why.
There's a lot of anger and confusion out there. Just how much of a problem is this? Well, there's no question that much of the chaos we see online is performative, which is to say that it's being staged for the cameras. That doesn't mean it's entirely insincere, but it is interesting to consider whether the events themselves would have happened, or would have happened at this scale and have this character, absent an ability to broadcast them on social media.
So he's arguing the protests wouldn't be happening if students could not put them on social media. So you contrast that with Vietnam War protests where students were protesting and they didn't have social media at that time. So, I mean, he says he's not saying that it's necessarily insincere, but it seems like that's heavily what he's implying. Now understand, with social media, that's partly how young people are seeing kids that are dying in Gaza. And so that idea that social media wouldn't, the protests wouldn't be happening without them. I don't think it's that students are only doing it to get attention on social media. I think it's more that they're being witness to the atrocities and being witness to or they're seeing the massacres that are happening over there.
Of course, his concern relates to far more than what's happening on college campuses in response to the war in Gaza. The combination of a smartphone and social media appears to be driving our species crazy. We're all effectively walking around with a television studio in our pockets. And the question is, what is this doing to us? So this is just to say that when I see video of crowds of very smug and very hostile kids at our finest universities...
He's claiming that they're smug. What evidence is there to really defend that adjective, to defend that type of description of these students? Students are holding up signs that are saying divest. They're arguing that the universities shouldn't be having endowments and basically hedge funds that are going toward weapon manufacturing companies. I listened to this the other day. I don't remember him making any type of argument justifying why they should be investing in weapons companies. It seems like he is very intentional with the arguments he looks at and that he cherry picks as much as he can.
Effectively supporting Hamas, I'm a little slow to conclude that this tells me everything I need to know.
Again, that argument, he's saying if students are protesting against what Israel's doing, they're supporting Hamas. I haven't seen a lot of protesters that have pro-Hamas signs. It seems like labeling students protesting as pro-Hamas, it's an attempt to just try to discredit them. But he's not really justifying why he believes that.
Know about the scope of the problem. As I've said before, the entire aftermath of October 7th has convinced me that I've been almost totally asleep to the current reality of anti-Semitism. So I think it is a far bigger problem than I realized. But I still don't know how informative it is to see a video of some imbecile at Columbia or Harvard.
Okay, again, he's just trying to equate these protests with anti-Semitism. Where were all of the protests against Jewish people before this was happening? If there was so much anti-Semitism, why weren't people upset all the time? It's now as Israel is bombing Gaza and as you have a lot of innocent people dying, if people protest that, you're calling them anti-Semitic, it's like a lose-lose. If people just stand by and watch the protests happen, it's they feel guilty for that. But then if they go out and protest and try to do what their conscience is pushing them to do, then you're going to label them anti-Semitic. Again, he's not really going into the key arguments of the protesters. Are there some protesters that are anti-Semitic? I mean, probably. But what percentage? And are you proving it? Are they going and doing polls where they're having these protesters fill out surveys about their feelings toward Jewish people? How exactly is he measuring anti-Semitism? Someone's saying, hey, quit dropping bombs on kids in Gaza. the idea that that's anti-Semitic, like that just seems like a huge stretch.
Shouting for the Jews to go back to Poland. What I can say is that the response of these universities has been totally inadequate and hypocritical. Their policies around protests have
totally inadequate and hypocritical, so they have police coming and arresting protesters. What more does he want? If colleges are already encouraging police to go and arrest protesters, does he want them to just be like beating protesters mercilessly? Like, what more does he want that colleges aren't currently doing?
Have clearly been violated and have been for months. And as many people have pointed out, it's the obvious double standard here that constitutes anti-Semitism. I'm less worried about the specifics of each ugly incident than I am about the fact